Now, the Torah also commands us, and this is a little bit difficult, that we're meant to dispossess the inhabitants of the land when we come in. Right? That's in Parshat Masei. That we're meant to dispossess the nations that are in the land, the Canaanite nations. Okay? And it says we're supposed to drive them out, and it says that if we don't drive them out, they become pins in our eyes and thorns in our side. But there's a danger in not doing it. Now, the truth is, Yehoshua ben Nun offered 3 options to the Canaanites. Either they can live in peace with us as Girei Toshav, as righteous Gentiles, as Bnei Noach, living in our country, allied to us. That's option 1. Option 2 is they leave. Option 3 is we kill them. Like, we fight and we win. So when you have these 3 options presented, it's a little more complicated than just drive them out. But with many of the Canaanites, we had no choice but to actually kill them. But the question is whether or not this is the law for all time with any nation in our land. Right? That's an argument that's presented today when we talk about Palestinian issues. Right? There are people who say, well, look what the Torah says here. The Torah commands us to drive them out, we have to drive them out. But at the same time, we know that the Torah repeats over and over again that we're supposed to deal justly and kindly with the stranger in our land. Right? That there are non-Israelites who live amongst us that we're supposed to treat well. That we're supposed to behave justly towards. So, how do we resolve this ostensible contradiction? The Ramban actually does it. The Ramban, later on in his commentary on, it's in the book of Dvarim, I forget exactly where, basically makes a distinction between the nations we have to drive out or fight versus those we live with and treat properly. And it basically comes down to, according to the Ramban, whether or not they have an interest in sovereignty over our land. If a nation wants to rule parts of the land of Israel, if they want political sovereignty over parts of the land of Israel, we have to fight them. We have a mitzvah to liberate our land from foreign rule and to not let any of our land fall under foreign rule. All the land of Israel has to be under Israelite sovereignty. Now, at the same time, if there's a non-Israelite population or individuals that want to live here as our allies, like the Druzen, right, in peace with us, then we have obligations to treat them properly and to take responsibility for their welfare and to behave justly towards them. So, according to the Ramban, the distinction is whether or not they want sovereignty over our land. And in theory, as long as Palestinians aren't interested in a Palestinian nation state with sovereignty over our land, then we can work it out. Then we can find a way to live together. And the truth is, in my experience, most Palestinians aren't interested in a state. They're interested in equality in a single state, right? And maybe some care more than others over whether or not that state is called Israel or whether or not it's defined as a Jewish state, but a lot of that might really come down to their experience with what a Jewish state has meant in their experience for the last 100 years, or the last 75 years, or 76 years. But in theory, there could be a Jewish state that's Israel and allows them to experience full equality together with us here, right? That could exist. Now, there's also an idea that the problem with the Canaanites was idolatry. And the reason why the Canaanites had to be driven from the land one way or another was because the land of Israel is the place where some kind of spiritual message comes to the world. Right? Like we broadcast a spiritual message to humanity from the land of Israel. So specifically, even though we obviously have an interest in there being no idolatry anywhere in the world, like idol worship is poisonous for humanity, and we want to eradicate it. But certainly we can't allow it to exist in the land of Israel, in the land that's meant to broadcast spiritual messages to the rest of humanity. So it's important to get rid of the Canaanite influence. Even if there are some Canaanites who fit the criteria to be able to stay and live with us, the Canaanite ideology. Remember, we understand the Canaanites as being the children of Ham, who conquered the land of Israel somewhere around the beginning of Parshat Lech Lecha, or just before, right? We're told that the Canaanite was then in the land, right? And that's understood, I think, by Rashi as they had just shown up, they had just conquered it. The terms Eretz Canaan and Eretz Yisrael were or Eretz Ivrim, rather. Eretz Canaan and Eretz Ivrim were interchangeable. The land of the Hebrews and the land of Canaan were the same place. And when Yosef is in prison in Egypt and he refers to the land as the land of the Hebrews, people know what he's talking about. And the fact that Avraham, or as Avram, was born outside the land of Israel, grew up outside the land of Israel, is an indication that they were refugees. They were refugees living somewhere else as a result of the Canaanite conquest of the land of the Hebrews. Right. So now this is, after the development of Am Yisrael, centuries of slavery in Egypt, 40 years in the desert, receiving the Torah, we come into the land of Israel to take it back from the Canaanites. And we have to make sure there's no idolatry in the entire land. And that's one of the things that the Torah is very clear about here, that regardless of whether or not it applies or doesn't apply to certain groups today, it certainly applied to the Canaanites then. Either because they were interested in some kind of political sovereignty over our land, or because of idolatry, or maybe both. It's also important to note that the Canaanites were largely vassals of the Egyptian Empire. And one of the reasons why it was so important for Egypt to be decimated during the Exodus, the 10 plagues, then the destruction of their military at the sea, is because later in history, when we come and conquer the land of Israel, we don't want the Egyptians showing up on behalf of the Canaanites, on behalf of their Canaanite vassals.